Hello.
Hello. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is John Graves. Excited to welcome you to this month's ArtistWorks Live. This month we're going to be talking with Mike Marshall, our online bluegrass mandolin teacher here at ArtistWorks.
Hello, friends.
We're going to be taking questions from you guys, the audience, so please get those questions ready. If you would please include your student name with your question, we'll qualify to win you a little prize at the end of the program today. So I'm excited to introduce our guest for this month. He's been teaching here at ArtistWorks for 6 years now this month, since June of 2011, and has completed more than, 4,390 video exchanges in that time, which is more than 2 a day on average. So welcome, everybody. Welcome, Mike Marshall.
Nice to be here, John. Thank you so much for putting this whole thing together.
My pleasure.
Hangout. This will be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. So where are you joining us from today?
Well, we're over here in Wuppertal, Germany for just a couple of more weeks here as Katerina finishes up her teaching position at the music school. My wife is the mandolin professor there. And yeah, it's great. We had a couple of weeks of real summer weather, and now we're back to gray skies and drizzly. Very northern German kind of climate we have. Birds are singing in case you hear them in the background. They're happy. 9 o'clock at night, and it's still kind of dusky. It's interesting.
9 o'clock at night. Nice. Okay. It's noon here. So.
Yeah, you're on the West Coast then, huh? How's the weather in San Francisco?
It's nice. It's nice and hot, but not too hot. We had a big heat wave last week, but cooled down a little bit. So.
We're in Napa, where heat is a good thing.
Yes. So let me quickly remind the audience that today's questions are going to be coming solely from you guys. So although time will only permit me to get to a small amount of these, please start sending them in now, and we'll hit as many as possible. Also, I'm going to be asking Mike in just a moment to start us off with a little tune, and he will likely play another 1 or 2 throughout this conversation. So if you guys have any requests, start sending those in now.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what people might be interested in hearing. I just got done playing a little show with Katerina this afternoon downtown, so I've got some of that music on my mind. Let's see, I might just whip something off here just for grins. Turkey in the Straw, what do you say? Kind of a classic bluegrass fiddle tune.
Nice.
There we go. Hey, Cello, calm down back there. We're going to get to you in a minute.
The bird added some nice vocal accompaniment there.
Yeah, that's perfect. Huh?
All right, so the questions are already rolling in, so let's get started. This one is coming from David Stevenson. He said, Mike, what's the biggest mistake that beginners can make? I'm assuming he's talking about mandolin players, but maybe just musicians in general.
Well, biggest mistake. Wow. I can be flippant, can't I? Biggest mistake beginners could make is not signing up to my online teaching.
There you go.
First off, I love teaching and I love beginners. You know, I love getting a hold of somebody right off the bat when they've just got an instrument and sending them on that good path of you know, getting the basics down, how to hold the instrument, what you should be doing with your hands, what kind of pick, what kind of strings, all those fundamentals. What happens with the angles of the fingers as you're making melodic shapes and chords. You know, I'm way into it. I'm way into the mechanics of it. So, you know, I think the mandolin being kind of a folk instrument for so many years, it's kind of fallen into this place where people just buy one and then they just start playing it. You know, maybe they played some guitar and or violin because it's tuned the same as a violin, or maybe they never played anything, but it's very friendly, it's small, and they just start trying to find some chords. Maybe they got a chord book. And so posture is a big one. Because it's so little, I find that most people need a little direction in terms of how to deal with their whole body and the instrument. I have a lot of tips on that, and it's usually the area that I spend the most on, especially for beginners, is posture. What to do with your hands, how to hold your hands.
Yeah. So I imagine you fell in love with playing at a pretty young age, but when did you fall in love with teaching? How'd that happen?
You know, I always thought I was taking lessons down in Florida as a teenager from a wonderful teacher, Jim Hilligus, and you know, he wasn't a virtuoso player, but he was a great teacher. He played all the different string instruments, and he played a lot of different styles. He made sure that I got the fundamentals and learned to read music and some of these things. But he also started our first teenage bluegrass band with some of his students. He got us playing by ear. But in terms of teaching, he retired when I was about 17. I was still in high school. And I was obviously one of his best students. And he said, Mike, I want you to take over all my students because I'm leaving this music school. It was a music store, and he had about 30 students. Wow. And I just moved right in and started doing it. And that's how I graduated high school. I ended up doing a work-study program and teaching guitar, banjo, mandolin, fiddle to all these, wow, mostly adults. You know?
Wow, that's amazing.
Young punk. But I got into it. I got way into it. I think you learn by teaching. You know, it forces you as a player to break your thing down into small parts that are digestible for people, and you have to put it in words. You have to explain it. And once you do that, I think that it digs that trench a little deeper for you personally, and really reconfirms what it is that works and why it works. And so and when it comes to the things you're working on, all those same metaphors work and all those same fundamentals are at play, no matter if you're trying to play the most difficult, you know, bluegrass inspired break that Sam Bush took, or some bebop transcription, or if you're just trying to play, you know, old Joe Clark at the basic level, you still have to sort of confront that. And so it taught me, you know, basically is what happened with teaching. I got fired up about it. It also enabled me to do something with music full time right away, right out of high school. I had a job. I was working. I could teach and play concerts. I could play the concerts I wanted to play. And the teaching part kept, you know, artistic side kind of pure for me.
Yeah, so you found yourself in a position where your day job didn't keep you from pursuing music. It actually kind of enabled you to dive deeper into it.
Exactly.
That's pretty great.
I've always appreciated that. I've always kept teaching part of what I do. Yeah. It's always represented maybe from a third to a half of my life.
Yeah, great. So Bob Long says, Mike, I'm curious about what you're currently listening to and if you still listen to classic bluegrass records.
That's really interesting because there's something about living here in Germany that has kind of got me going back to bluegrass. Something about hearing it in another environment, in another culture.
Yeah.
That really pulls me. And so I'm deep into it. I mean, I'm listening to like Tony Rice, the Rice Brothers right now. And Dave Evans just passed away, a great singer. And I picked up one of his records, and I've had it in the car for the last 2 days. And the girls fight about who gets to take it to daycare, you know, and listen to it. So I go back to the old stuff. And in fact, teaching has been great that way. Teaching on the site has been really cool because I've used it as an opportunity to go back to some of those classic records. Like I took the Skaggs and Rice duet record and just went through all the Ricky Skaggs solos. Went through about half.
That was great. That was really cool.
And I think, you know, that's cool for people. Or like Manzanita, the Tony Rice record with Sam Bush playing all over it, Sam and David Grisman, and just looking at some of those breaks or those kickoffs and giving folks something very specific from the old repertoire to focus on. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it resonates. When you're out of the country, you want to hear something from back home.
There you go. All right, so let's see. This next one is from Joe Nobling. It says, how does one achieve driving a tune as opposed to writing a tune?
Writing a tune.
No, driving instead of writing it.
Driving, yeah. I've talked about that some in some of my lessons, where there's something about when you play groove music, whether it's bluegrass or swing or choro, music that's danceable like that, where I think for beginners, there's a thing where they get into just riding on the groove that's already happening. And I am always encouraging my students to kind of take responsibility for the groove and be a part of it and be the person who's actually making the groove happen. I think that's what he means by driving it rather than riding in it. We talk sometimes about it's like a river, and you have to decide if you're just letting your boat kind of float down the river or if you're actively making the boat go and deciding which direction it goes and how fast it goes. Mm-hmm. And that's the difference between a great rhythm player, let's say. When I think of the great rhythm mandolin players, when I think of how Sam Bush drives the groove, I mean, he's a drummer. He is a drummer. Yeah. David Grisman, same thing. And those were my inspirations as a teenager. So that's what I always wanted to do. And that doesn't necessarily mean being pushy with the time and demanding that it be everybody in the band follow you. You have to also react to what's going on around you and be sensitive to that. But it does mean a certain kind of responsibility for the time and to be accurate and locked. And really give people who you're playing with something that they can really lean on, that supports them completely, that's solid. And so, that's the miracle of Sam Bush, is that, I mean, I love what he says, which is, hey, my job as a rhythm player or in any band is to make you sound great. Yeah. And that's the ethos that I've taken on as a rhythm player in any of the groups I'm in. I'm there to make the music happen, make it sound good, make it easy for the soloist. Mm-hmm. Don't get all jumbled up in his stuff with something fancy that's going to confuse the time. Right. Keep it really clear.
So what's step one then? If someone out there knows that they're guilty of writing the tune rather than driving it, and they want to work on their rhythm and really start driving, is it like metronome exercises, or is it just a state of mind and an energy, or what do they do to kind of cross over?
I think it's state of mind. I think it's don't be afraid to ask good players, and don't be afraid to, if there's somebody you admire, really try and cop what it is that they're doing in a detailed way. Really look at all the nuance of how they're playing. It won't necessarily, playing with a metronome can be great, and I certainly recommend it. But it's also, sometimes I'll hear people playing with a metronome and they're really relying on almost too much, like they can be using too much metronome. I love what Victor Wooten said about a metronome. He likes to put it on so it's clicking, a lot of beats. Let's say you're playing, you might have the click set. That's a lot of click. If you cut that in half, that's going to be, a little trickier, but that's more reasonable. But what Victor loves to do, and I love this, is cut that in half. And see if you can stay with it. See if you're actually accurate in that big long hole. And that'll actually build your time. Then your time will get better because you'll realize, oh gosh, I'm rushing when I play that last phrase. I'm not lining up with that click. So then you're trying to work on your own internal clock. And that will really solidify you, and then you'll build confidence around that. And when you do finally play with people, you'll know, hey, I've done this work, and I'm pretty sure I've got a pretty clear sense of time. Yeah. Certainly confidence is a huge part of the equation when it comes to being a great rhythm player and a supportive rhythm player. You just have to and believe in yourself.
Doesn't it have, for me, when I'm playing, I can keep incredible rhythm if I'm playing something very simple. But it's as soon as it gets complicated that I find myself starting to rush something.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So I mean, I'm assuming many people are like that. It's easier to.
Same thing. Yeah. You know, if you've got a nice solid backbeat, let's say, going, you know, and then all of a sudden there's a part of the song where it goes like those like groups of three, you know, this is what they are. People will typically rush that stuff. Because they're so excited that that part's coming, you know, that they'll lean ahead. And also, for us who grew up playing music with a lot of notes in it, whenever we get to a place where there aren't a lot of notes, like bam, bam, wait, bam, 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 wait, that almost kills a bluegrass picker. That wait, man, that wait is like an eternity for us guys who have spent our whole life going diggy, 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 diggy. Because you play those 16ths, you're gonna be pretty much locking, right? Yeah. They're not going anywhere. But that space is the tricky one. That's the kind of thing you will want to work with a metronome on, clearing up where how those lay. Right. Very cool. Very interesting. Okay, so let's see. Bill H is asking about kind of the difference between just learning and playing by ear, or being absorbed by theory, or the balance between the two. What are some of your thoughts and experience with? Yeah, that's a good one. You do have to have a balance. You know, I think that I love to have both things going on simultaneously. I do spend a lot of time with my students because I can tell when they don't know the theory, when they're improvising and they're in A minor and they just play A minor pentatonic through all the chords, whether it's an A minor or D7 or E, they keep that A minor pentatonic, even though it went to, when it goes to that D7, I want to start hearing some F sharp notes. You know, and when it goes to E, I want to hear the G sharps. Now, if you can hear that, great. But if you can't, and you're one of my students, I'm going to give you an assignment. I'm going to say, look, when it goes to that D7, let's lean on those F sharps on the downbeats. Here you are. This is an E chord. You know, it works, kind of works to just stay on A minor pentatonic through the E, because that, you know, that G natural is going to sound like a bluesy third. That's okay. But I tend to see where people are at as a teacher and just gently guide them a little bit towards some of that stuff if I feel that they need it. And yeah, I think it's not going to hurt anybody to learn a little bit about that theory stuff, because your sense of time and your sense of emoting and your feeling for playing by ear isn't going to go away. Right. You know, it's just going to enhance what you already can do. Yeah. Just a little bit, you know. Don't get lost in it. Right. Because it can be kind of a math puzzle if you start diving in real deep. So just take a little part of it, you know, and that's what I like to try and do as a teacher, just give them incremental bits that I think they're ready for. Say, look out for this little chord here. Here's a couple of notes to think about. Yeah. Back in college, part of my major, we had to get pretty into some music theory courses. And and I found that when you're really immersed in it, it kind of almost, for me, it made me maybe a little less creative, because I would sit down on my instrument, and like you said, I would start doing math and equations, and I'm not supposed to do that, but I know I can do this, and you know, getting really nerdy and textbook about music. And I think from what I found is it's a really strong
tool to have in your tool belt if you get yourself painted into a corner and need to get out of it, you know. But to approach writing music with that at the front of your mind, for me, was a little killed the creative process.
No, I think writing wise, you got to kind of just toss it out.
Yeah.
I agree. I think writing occupies a different zone, and I think you have to just kind of go for it. You're obviously going to use the tools you have. You know, I've sometimes dealt with songwriters as a producer, you know, and you see somebody playing 4 or 5 songs, and you realize at a certain point that they're only using the chords they know. And they're writing all their songs with those chords because those are the chords they know. And sometimes they get some great stuff. But if they knew like 2 or 3 other chords, those would start showing up, I'll bet.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And so, yeah, it's a blend. I mean, I think a little, you know, when you're writing, it is kind of like diving off. You just kind of got to go for it. And sometimes I love even grabbing an instrument and detuning it, and not knowing anything about where I am, and literally just going for sound and seeing what comes. I've done that as a way of kind of breaking you out of that nerdy science part of your brain,
right? And
just enjoying the sound of the instrument.
Well, when this student mentioned being able to play by ear, and I imagine to any musician how incredibly what a valuable skill that would be, but especially in the bluegrass world when you're just in these jams and you never know what tunes you're going to be playing and who you're going to be playing them with, to just be able to have that ear to recognize what key you're in, what chords they are, if they're major, minor, whatever, and just be able to quickly adjust to that. I mean, that's an incredible skill.
Bluegrass is a beautiful style in that way, in that there is a sort of set vocabulary that people are working with that can be learned rather quickly, especially as a chord player. You know, you can learn 1, 4, 5 in like a couple of positions, and as a mandolin player, you're kind of good to go. You know, you can chop along with almost anything. I mean, especially if you already play guitar and then you transfer over to mandolin, you can watch the guitar players in the jam and see what chords they're playing.
Right, there you go.
You know, mandolin players are at an advantage because we play backbeats, you know. So we have that other millisecond or second to find out what the chord is before we chop. You know what I mean? Like the bass players have to hit the downbeat, so they got to know what the chords are. Worst comes to worst, you know, give me a good muted sound, but make it groove, and we're good to go, man. But yeah, bluegrass has a kind of a language that you can use, even for improvising solos. There can be like licks that you can they're like little pods that you can mix and match. I'm sure people hear that in the music, and that's probably why they love the music, because it sounds so familiar. You know, from tune to tune, there's just this language that people are using, and I like to do that as a teacher, is break that stuff down and say, you know, we've been doing lick of the week for a few weeks now, and I was never, for years, I was never big on like thinking about licks or teaching licks, because I kind of wanted this ideal of a pure improvisation that was somehow inspired in that moment and was something I never played before. But hey, let's face it, you know, all of us use things that we've played before, and we're introducing things in slightly new ways, but it's material that melodic ideas that we've played a million times. And so I've kind of opened that door, and I'm saying, here it is. You're in this chord. Here's some things you can do on your way to that chord.
There you go.
And, people seem to really be digging that. It seems to give them something very fundamental that they can really use.
Well, you said earlier in your sentence, you said, give me a good chop, give me a good, nice muted sound, and we're good to go. So Dan Michaels actually wrote in, he's Dan the Mando Man. He said, can you talk about the nuances of getting the best chop? Speed, back, how hard, etc.
Yeah. The first thing to realize is that the mandolin is a backbeat. It's the snare drum in a bluegrass band. Bass goes boom, mandolin goes chuck. And that's surprisingly there's most mandolin players, many of them don't actually do that. They do a lot of extra stuff. So that's what I'm going to say first off is like, can you really hone it down to this? My foot's doing the bass part, you know, and that's the deal right there. Now, when you get into the nuance of it, I usually emphasize that it's really the low two strings that are really causing what we call the bark. I mean, you could play that A chord there and only play the bottom two strings. Listen to that. It still sounds like the chop. You don't need really to emphasize those upper strings hardly at all. This stuff. And you certainly don't ever want it to sustain. You know, that's just too bright and too, I call it splatty. You know, when you, and then the other thing that can happen a lot is what I call wiki-wacky, where instead of just the chop, we end up hearing a lot of other things. And that confuses the groove of a bluegrass band, because a bluegrass band is really like this engine with all these gears, and each person has their own separate role. Mm-hmm. The banjo is playing those 16 notes that you're trying to play. The guitar also does a little bit of it, but he's more sustaining. We don't want to be sustaining. What happens is mandolin players come from guitar, and so they bring their guitar right hand to the mandolin with all that sustain and that but what's cool about a bluegrass band is it's like a grid. You know, everybody has their part. You know, bass is playing downbeats, mandolin's playing backbeats, banjo's rolling, and guitar is sustaining, fiddle's sustaining, and maybe playing fills. So what happens, and why we love the music so much, is that you can really hear everybody all the time. Because you're playing a part that nobody else is playing, sonically it just pokes through and is not getting washed out.
Right.
If you're playing 16ths like that, you're washing out against the banjo. Mm-hmm. So it causes the banjo to not be heard and you to not be heard.
Right.
Because chances are you're not lining up your 16th notes. You know, they're doing this.
Yeah, that's the perfect term for it, is washing. You're just kind of washing each other out.
Yeah, you create fuzzy, unclarity, and so those are the things I tend to focus on with folks, and it's a weird thing to practice at home alone.
Right.
Who wants to sit around doing this? You know? But keep that in mind at your next jam, because that's what you're going to want to do when you already have a bass.
Well, we have all sorts of questions coming in, and
far away, man.
Thanks to the audience for all this participation. This is great, but I think I want to take a quick musical interlude break, and maybe you can jam something for us. We had a couple. Let's see, there was a Coal Burning Grease Fire, and then also the Gator Strut, the classic.
Oh, jeez.
Gator Strut. So
I got the mandocello here.
Yeah.
Coal Burning Grease Fire. I mean, that's. Key of B. Forget that. That's Daryl Anger's song. I'm not. No, that's a great tune. I love that.
It is.
He and I played it live, and we're going to make another record this fall. I bet we're going to put that thing on the CD. I think we should.
You should. It's a great jam.
That's a hoss of a tune. Key of B. There's nothing crazier than the key of B. I love it, but that Darren, I've cursed him for years for writing that thing.
Nice.
Look for it this fall, friends. I promise to clean it up.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know you guys were getting back in the studio together. Do you know when and where?
October, we're going to be on the East Coast playing a couple of shows. Oh man, there's a whole bunch of bats flying around out here. Sorry, you're not allowed. Who's trying to get in here? You guys recognize that sound, don't you?
Oh yeah, that's Skype.
Go away. Sorry. So yeah, we're gonna do some shows on the East Coast and Connecticut, I believe, and then someplace in upstate New York. Look on our websites for those, and they're gonna put some other things together. I'm gonna do something at Berklee School of Music. I'm gonna be a guest instructor there, and sit in on some of Daryl's classes and John McGann's group.
That's amazing.
I did that last year, and it was a ball, man. In fact, they were studying the music of a CD I did with Bela Fleck and Edgar Meyer, Uncommon Ritual. It was their class assignment during that semester was to learn those tunes. So that was very flattering. So here's the mandocello, folks. Those of you who don't know what in the world I have here.
That giant mandolin you're holding?
Strut. So that's tuned just like a cello. The highest string is A, like your second string on a mandolin. A, D, G, then the low C. So if you grab what you think of as a G chord, it's now a C chord. Oh, we could go all night long.
That's such a good tune. What year did you write that?
Wrote that when I was about 21. First in California. Maybe I got this instrument. I don't remember if I wrote it on this one or David Grisman was loaning me a K4 when I first joined the band. He said, "Here, play this." I'd never played a mandocello, but I went crazy with it. Just thought, oh man, the world needs more mandocellos. We've got some mandocello players on the site, actually.
Yeah, and to that point, JT Meme is asking, any tips on how to make mandocello work well when playing with other instruments, particularly as a beginner?
Oh yeah, that's a big one. I mean, mandocello is a big instrument, and it's really, it's really a bass. You know, I mean, this note here, that's the G string of a bass. So you know, if you've got a bass player with you, you're not going to be wanting to play a lot of low stuff down there. You're going to want to get up high and get it, you know, not necessarily be right on top of his notes down low. So it is tricky. I love playing mandocello when there is no bass. So then you're free. You know, you could be the bass. You know, you get a couple of mando players rocking with that, you're in business. The other thing to keep in mind is, let's say you do want to play some chords, because it is a great chord instrument. Keep in mind that this thing is putting out a ton of sound. So if you just do 2 strings, I mean, it fills up the room, right? I mean, you can play like double stops. And that's or 3 strings up high, and that's a lot of sound. Even you know, even 2 strings. Little things like that can really flesh out the sound of other people playing the melody. So that's often what I'll do, is I'll just thin out my part so that it's got a lot of little notes here and there, double stops. Or like I said, I will be the bass player if there's no bass player. But you know, I think what's cool about this instrument is that because it hasn't been explored so much, there's wide open possibilities. You know, I've written a bunch of tunes on it, and then structured the band to fit around me, you know, in Gator strut.
Right.
I am playing down low on that F minor chord, but boy, whatever bass player is there, he's on his low F, and he's just going, you know, nothing else, and giving me all that room to so you can really hear that melody that's pretty low on the instrument. But you have to kind of build around the structure of the tonality of this instrument. But it, you know, it can go up high and get out of the way of things too. I mean, if I was playing a fiddle tune, you know, I could be doubling a mandolin, and it sounds really pretty just in octaves, you know. The other thing to keep in mind with mandocello is you don't play as many notes when you play these fiddle tunes. There's ways of simplifying the melody. So because it's so low and rumbly, you don't necessarily need. You can get by with the shape of that melody. You can play. So you're still playing the tune, you're placing few more quarter notes in it, as opposed to. I mean, I can do that, but I might not necessarily on this instrument, especially if I was to rock down the octave. I'll really thin it out, so you get to kind of, you know, love that sustain.
Right. That's good. Gary Leonard said, I could listen to Mike play that mandocello all day long.
Listen to these chords. Two notes.
That's beautiful. Is that a tune?
No, just improvise.
You're just messing around.
Actually, I wrote something with those voicings. That's a C minor with a 7th, C, B flat, and E. And you just pull it up diatonically through the harmonic material of that scale. I did it on the first record Daryl Anger and I did. There's There's a tune on there called, I forget what it's called.
Oh, this is the beautiful chorus. It sounds great.
Gator Return of Gator's Return, something like that. But you know, there's a lot hiding in this instrument that I look forward to exploring and help other people do.
Cool. So Michael Newman says,
Yeah.
As a guitar and ukulele player, I was wondering what your warm-up routine is. Great question.
Oh,
He says,
wow.
my left elbow gets tight even when I do warm up. And also, how do you break down your practice routine? Great question.
Yeah. Well, you know, as I've gotten older, I've had to learn to warm up. You know, when I was a teenager, I would pick up the instrument and go. I don't know. I don't ever remember feeling the kind of sensations I feel now. But, you know, I've learned that I can't just dive in and start playing difficult music right away. So I've just had to go slow. You know, I've had to slow it down first thing in the morning, you know, and just, I'll often just improvise something pretty. Just enjoy the sound of the instrument. I mean, I've got a book of finger busters, all these crazy things, and I teach them on the site, things that will warm you up, you know. But, you know, and that's definitely very systematic. It goes through all the various combinations of fingers. And I'll do that, you know, if I'm working on something, like right now I'm working on the Bach, but if, you know, I've been playing all day. If I tried to play that first thing in the morning, forget it. You know,
Right.
That's, you'd kill yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I might start playing it, but I'll start playing it. And really introduce each finger to the fret in a very, like, down pressure way. And really examine how each muscle in each finger feels, and how the wrist feels as it's coming around, and how different parts of the hand feel as you're warming up, as you're. I might get that far and just shake it out, you know, this kind of thing, to get blood in there and get that, what is it, the fluid called?
Circulation?
Synovial fluid. It's this
yeah.
thing that wraps the tendons and actually is grease that makes the tendons slip easily past the muscles. Cartilage. Yeah, there's all these series of crossing tendons all through each joint, and so you want to get that stuff lubed up. I might do something like that because it's something I'm working on. Or I might explore a key. I might just say, I'm just going to be in A for a while. Play scale patterns. If I find something that's not functioning well, I'll explore it, you know, and do it a few times until it feels nice. I hope that helps. Definitely don't want to play through pain. If you've got any kind of pain going on, then you want to address that. It's probably posture. You know, when I see people so regularly, as you said, over 4,000 videos now, I've seen every possible way to hold a mandolin. And I've seen some weird ones that people could hurt themselves if they kept playing that way. So right away I get in there and deal with it. Say, look, deal with this, lower that shoulder. I'm seeing tension here, I'm seeing tension there. I mean, that's the advantage of this way that we're teaching here on the site. And I get to really see it. I mean, you can look at all the YouTube videos you want, but it's amazing how many times I have to say the same thing because people don't see it in themselves, oddly. Even if they're on the site and they're watching a lot of videos, they don't necessarily see what they're doing in relationship to what I'm telling this other person they should be doing. So I love that moment when somebody finally sends me a video and we can get down to business.
Well, for anybody watching who just heard that, if you haven't sent Mike a video, or maybe you're not one of Mike's students, maybe you play ukulele or guitar or piano or cello, or send your teacher a video if you haven't yet. I know it can be, I've done it. I've sent videos to Mike Marshall, or to Brian Sutton, to Paul Gilbert, to Nathan East.
All right.
Yeah, so I know that it can be a little nerve-wracking, but you're gonna get the individual attention that you.
Yeah, it's something that no other online teaching school provides, and I think there's just nothing like it, you know. And I don't see how you can get the same insight. You know, private lessons obviously, but you know, hey, I'm here. So let's hook up. I think it's probably because it's such a new technology that people are nervous about it. I think in the future, this will become more normal as time goes on and people will get more comfortable with it. I can certainly understand the nerves thing.
Yeah. Okay, so we have so many good questions waiting for us.
Let's go.
And only a few minutes to get to them. So we're going to enter lightning round right now.
All right.
Where we got to busting through some of these because there's some.
I could spend forever on every one of these subjects, you know me.
Yeah. So this person says, is there a big difference between the technique you teach and the classical technique Katerina is teaching?
You know, not really. We've talked about it a lot. We obviously live together. She's playing a bowback mandolin, but you know, on her site, she's got lots of people playing F-style mandolin, American-style flatback mandolins. Our right hands are almost identical. You know, the way we hit the string. The one thing that she teaches and emphasizes a lot is a kind of angled downstroke, which is like a rest stroke, where you're playing at a 45-degree angle and coming into the back. And resting, when you play the D string, you're resting on the A string. And it was something I'd never really thought about until hanging out with her, and now I do it. I've just incorporated it into the way I play. Thank you, Katerina. But after thinking about it, I realized that it's very close to what Bill Monroe does when he plays all downstrokes and plays the blues. Mm-hmm. It's really like go for that power and you're really driving the string. I'll tell you what, that girl has sound that she gets out of that little bowl back. And it is very powerful. You can't get that the way, you know, well, there's two picking techniques that she uses. One is that, what I described, particularly for slow pieces. And you do get the most out of your mandolin. You get this blossoming, bloomy sound on sustained notes. And then there's the technique that we use, which is more direct down towards the floor, and you're playing multiple down and up. She uses a footstool, just like I recommend. A different kind of pick, different strings, but she's not adamant that her students do that. So I would say no, not a lot. There's different repertoire. And a different feeling for how to express the rhythm based on phrasing, but technique is very close.
Okay, so this next question, there's a warning label on it because this is a subject, and it always comes up, and we could spend a whole hour on this at least.
Okay.
But here it is. Doug B wants to know, what's the best way to get started with improvisation?
Improvisation. Oh.
Yeah.
I would say learn a melody to a tune, and then let me show you some variations to it. Mm-hmm. I love to take a tune, simple tune like Salt Creek. That's the opening phrase, right? The next phrase is, and you come back to the opening phrase. and there's an ending phrase. The way I teach improvisation is I say, let's look at different ways of playing that opening phrase. And then the second phrase, instead of let's play. What that does is it creates the sound of the melody, but in a variation. I say that the doorway into improvisation is variation first.
Mm-hmm.
And from that, you begin to build a vocabulary that you can then use, and you start to see inside the tune in a new way. And then you build out, you know, but it's really these baby steps, you know, this one thing at a time kind of approach. I don't like the idea that you just dive in the pool and go for it and something will come out and it'll all be cool.
Yeah.
I go right for the goods. Learn other people's solos.
When this is pretty advanced stuff here, but when Mike Block was in the studio here and he had Rashad Eggleston in with him, Rashad was saying how him and his friends used to put on a movie and mute it and play along with the changes.
Oh my God.
And I was like, you know
what?
what? I've never heard that before, and that is pretty cool. I mean, that's some advanced improvisation right there.
Yeah, well, they probably already have some of the skills and the theory and licks and all that stuff already under their fingers. I'm guessing whoever's asking this question is more basic than that. But Vassar Clements used to watch cartoons.
That's really cool.
And play along with cartoons and
imitate. Once you pick your key, the rest is done. I mean, the movie's now deciding what mood, your tempo, what's going on. Is it a love scene? Is it
I love it.
Battle? Pretty cool. So let's see. We got to keep getting through these. Michael Newman, another question from Michael. He says, do you have any advice on how to inspire my daughters to practice more and get excited about practicing more than their required 10 minutes a day? One plays flute, one plays clarinet.
Read a book called, I was just talking about it yesterday. I emailed it to you. The Talent Code by John.
Oh, yeah, you emailed me about that yesterday, yeah.
David Coyle. He's got some great insights into that. It's about finding that trigger that's going to get them fired up. Right. And I love this idea. And I remember the moment that it happened to me. And he talks about hotbeds of great talent, whether it's a soccer team in Brazil, some little crummy village in Brazil, or a baseball team in Puerto Rico, or a violin school here. It's not necessarily innate talent that makes this stuff happen. I guess it really is the environment that you're in and the folks you're around and whether a kid kind of gets inspired. He talks a lot about them having to have something to strive. It's all about that striving to get better and being inspired by maybe a kid who's just a little bit better than you and wanting to do that. That's a big one, apparently. And, when you look at some of the greatest musicians, many of them were younger kids. So they had those older brothers and sisters that they were kind of chasing after. Yeah. It's this constant search for it and striving that builds, what is it called, myelin, that wraps around the nerves inside the brain. And that's, I can imagine that that's it. You know, we have two daughters, so we're dealing with the same thing. You know, if I try and poke at them to do it, it probably ain't gonna happen. That's been my experience so far. But Katerina, man, she nailed it the other day. She just started doing this very fun thing where she was pretending to be a different person and be Josie's mandolin teacher. And they totally both went into character. And it really worked. Something's happening now where they get it out and they just do this total role play thing.
That's cool.
And so we'll see if it sticks, you know.
Yeah, you got to be creative with kids.
Oh man!
What age did you get them started?
Well, it's just starting to happen. Paulina's 4 and she's got violin and she's actually enjoying her teacher. Now, you know, some days she'll say, I don't want to go. And then once she gets in there, he's a great teacher. And he gets her going. And Josie's 6 and just starting on the mandolin. So we'll see.
Yeah, my girls are my twins.
They have had the inspiration. I mean, they've been to all these festivals and these camps this summer, a whole bunch of stuff. I'm bringing them around. They'll be seeing other kids doing it. So, gosh, we'll see if it takes. I think this is definitely something I'd love to have discussions with on the forums on the website. If other students have ideas, I think we should be sharing this and really putting it out there, because I know there's a lot of folks with kids.
Yeah.
When we get them playing, so I'd love to continue this dialogue online with any of the students out there.
Yeah, let's get it started. Someone get a forum thread going, and everyone can kind of chime in. I have my twin daughters are turning 5 in a couple weeks, and I'd love to get them started on something.
There you go. We got to get this thing figured out.
So, all right, a couple more. Only time for maybe 1 or 2 more. This person says, as I get older, I find it difficult to learn and retain new material. Any suggestions for that?
Oh boy, I'm trying to learn German, dude. I know what you're talking about. I can't tell you how many times I've had to learn the same word. Now, when I was 15, you play that tune for me and bam, I'll play it right back at you. And you could wake me out of a sleep a year later and I could play it. You know, what's going on?
Yeah.
It just does take that many more repetitions, I'm afraid.
Yep. Repetitions.
I don't know. It's a muscle. It's got to be worked. You know, you will get it, but you do have to slow it down and break it down and go over it a few more times than you would if you were a teenager. But that ain't stopping me. I go to my lessons and give it a go, you know, and just keep at it. We got to keep going. It's got to be good for us, right? That kind of work. It's got to be great for the brain also.
Yeah, it keeps you sharp, keeps you challenging yourself, setting and meeting and completing goals, all that stuff.
Yeah. So I do want to add a couple of things I want to go back to Katarina's site. She does teach a ton of crazy advanced cross-picking techniques, multiple string, multiple down things that there's a whole bunch of, and solo, I mean duo style things where she's tremoloing a melody while playing dotted notes. I mean, her site is very deep. Sorry, I just wanted to revert back
to that question.
But in terms of holding the pick, it's very similar.
So let's see here. We're pretty much out of time. So I want to just end by asking you just about, you know, it's important. I always like to remind our students that our teachers, our masters are still students themselves and still learning.
Never stops.
Yeah. So with that in mind, what are your, you know, goals and what are you working on? What do you hope to accomplish in the next year, 2 years, 5 years as a musician?
Yeah, this is great. This is great because you're right. It has not stopped. Music for me has always been the same thing. I've just always been striving to get a couple of new things under my fingers, whether it's memorize a new Bach piece, learn a new Brazilian choro, become a better improviser, learn how to shift when I'm improvising up the neck in a smooth way, get a better sound. I mean, there's a very big list. And so I encourage, like I did a whole wrap on this, I guess a month ago on my site. The site is now really big. There's lots of material there to learn. There's the curriculum, but then there's all the other material that people have sent me. Then there's all the, you know, the music to go with that. And so you can get a little overwhelmed as a student, and I understand that. It's like, God, how am I ever going to do all this? Well, you're not. That's the thing. And so you just have to pick those few things that you know are going to make you just a little bit better. Mm-hmm. And that's what I do. You know, I've usually just got maybe a half dozen different things. Like I'm working on this Bach thing I just played, the G minor presto. I'm refingering it basically right now. And so for me to remember those new fingerings, ooh, this is weeks. It's gonna take me, just to refinger a Bach piece like that. I mean, I'm gonna have to work on it for 2 or 3 weeks before I'm confident. And I may not perform it for a year.
Right. Wow.
That's the kind of timeline some of this stuff takes.
Yeah.
Then I'm also writing, trying to write new material for the record I'm doing with Daryl in October. So that's creeping up mighty quick. So that'll get some high priority. You have front burner and back burner things. But it's not a ton. It's usually 4 or 5 or a half dozen things at any one moment that they tend to focus on.
So just real quick, we got to go. What's something that has nothing to do with music that you love?
The music?
That has nothing to do with music that you love.
Oh, cooking.
Yeah.
It's all about the kitchen for me.
Nice. What's your dish? What are some of your dishes?
Well, I'm way into pesto right now because basil's coming in like crazy up from Italy. So I've been making a lot of pesto. There's a great Moroccan grocery store that has the most amazing fish. So we're getting really nice fish right now, and you're just starting to see things like peaches and plums. It's a little early, but I traded guitar lessons with the head chef at Japanese restaurant for a few years, and now we're buddies. And so when I'm back there, I just dive right back in. I love to make pasta by hand.
That's awesome.
I'm going to put some of that stuff on the site, man. I hope it doesn't offend, but I want to share some of that with the folks. We're going to have a whole other section of the
That's cool. That's
where
great.
we're going to share recipes, okay?
Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Mike. We all really, I'm sure everyone learned something. I learned something. And,
cool.
And I really appreciate you taking the time.
John, it's a pleasure working with you and everybody at ArtistWorks. You guys are amazing how you run that site. Thank you for keeping it strong, and thank all the students for being alive, making it work, and keeping us inspired.
Yeah, thank you to all the students for signing on today and
right on.
Asking questions and participating and just doing something for yourself. Music is a journey, and you're not going to get anywhere until you get out there and make it happen. So
amen.
All right. Well, so then last thing.
All right.
The winner is. Congratulations to Doug B.
Oh.
Doug B, you're going to be contacted by our customer service department, and we'll get you a little time added to your current subscription. So.
Right on, Doug. Way to go.
All right, everyone. Well, we'll see you next month for our next ArtistWorks Live. Get practicing and get that video submitted to Mike as soon as possible.
Keep it real. See you soon, folks.
Thanks, guys.